Hello ladies, welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a lot done while you listen today. But before you go on your way to do some things at home that might be a little repetitive or tedious and you just need to listen to something, I want to share my teacup with you. And this is one of the new Stitch Call China cups. It costs $7 at Home Goods. And Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Ross, and Marshalls are all those second stores where it's new products but slightly imperfect for some reason, or maybe just outdated, maybe last year's. And I'm really liking this. I don't know if you can see it. There's a nice glaze on it on the outside, and the inside has also a rose in it. And they don't name their pieces, but I enjoyed seeing this. I have been out, and that's the one thing that I brought home was one of these. And thanks to you for your wonderful, heartfelt contributions, I was able to get this and add this to my collection, and also kind of goes with what I'm wearing today, so I hope you enjoy that. And I also have a lot of things to tell you that I have neglected, and I've been walking around outside and watching the sun rise and thinking of things that I need to do today. And I thought probably I better come and talk to you first, because I've missed coming here and I've missed our talks. And so I want to inform you and update you about our events here. First of all, we had the descendants came and they swept the roof and took the moss off of everything, so to help this situation we have with dry rot all around. And just beautiful. And one of my grandsons is already engaged in learning to fly an airplane. But when he was up on the roof, I said to him, you'd be a lot more use to me if you reserved your height to just the height of my roof. You can fix things for me. And I said, you're no good to me flying around up there, but if you could just learn to fix the roof every year, that would be great. And I did pay him a little, and so I'm really grateful that they came to do some repairs. And we had an event called the Butler School, and I showed you last time that I came here. The book that I use is called The Butler's Guide to Running the Home, and one of the first things I read to them was how if you could learn to be prompt, and you could learn to be clean, and you could learn to be orderly, that would be all you would need to be butler. And so some of the younger ones were asking me to come to their living quarters that they occupied while they were here and judge it and tell me whether it was good enough, because I was the head butler until they could reach a standard where they could be proclaimed head butler of their own area. So we did the butler training, and I was quite pleased with it. Not so burdened down with picking up after other people, and freed up their time, freed up my time, and made me feel more restful in my brain. And so this next one we are going to do, I'm hoping it will be Homeschool Revisited, and all the older children can come back and tell me something that they have learned since homeschooling, or when I homeschool you, and you'll understand what it's all about. And that is, it never ends. They're already telling me, oh, I wish we'd had the internet, because now I've found out more about this subject that I wanted to know more about, but we couldn't find anything about it. We would go to bookstores, we would go through catalogs, we would try talking to people, find everything we could about something. We'd go to the local chambers of commerce and try to find out something about maybe a person who helped pioneer a place that we lived, and just couldn't find hardly anything. And so now they're all looking up the names and places and finding things that we wanted to know more about. And not only that, but also things like, for me, textiles and how things are made, and what ingredients are in certain things. And so we're going to have a Homeschool Revisited, or redo, and everybody gets to come and tell something that new that they have learned that has advanced from what they had in homeschooling. And so I want you to try doing the same thing, because I'm here to homeschool you. I'm elderly now, and I get to do that. And so even if you're a grandmother or a great-grandmother, you can benefit a lot from being homeschooled by homeschooling yourself. Now, you don't need to order a curriculum. I have mentioned several books that I was very fond of, and so were my children during homeschool years. But you know what? You can find, we went to, like I said, we went to the stop areas, the civic areas, when you're traveling and there's this little turnout and you can go and it's a visitor center. And we would get free maps and free brochures and put them in a scrapbook. And that was even before scrapbooks were popular. And we just had these primitive looking books where we pasted things in and would tell about the area. We could learn from many things. We also learned to distinguish between what was truthful and what was not, because many of the visitor centers in some of the areas would have really false information about the earth and its formation and the amount of time. And of course, it really made me cringe knowing that our tax dollars had paid for some of this exaggeration and disinformation. But see, we learned from it, and we learned to distinguish between what was true and what was not by comparing it to God's Word. And so we are going to have a homeschool revisited, and I'm going to be sharing a few things with you that might help you. You can say you are being homeschooled, and what a delight it is, isn't it? And so now I want to go on to some of our events. We had a free table because it is too much trouble to stand out there and just collect nickels and dimes. It's not worth it, and it costs us a lot less to have a free table than to sit out there all day and monitor people paying for things. And sometimes people do just come to the door and donate something, even though we don't require it. But the free table helps people around here who might need something, and everybody, it's so much more successful than a garage sale. A garage sale or yard sale, I have to haul so much of it back in and find a place to put it, and then try to resell it out the next season. But they take everything in a free table, and I want to just remark about some of the things they took, because I can't fit everything into my house. I don't have a garage. I don't have a storage area, so everything that I have has to have a place to go. But I would take things like a stack of plastic bags from the grocery store that had only been used once, and I folded them nicely and wrapped a string around them or something. They would take those. They took all the plastic and glass returnable bottles that are 10 cents for Oregon. They took them all. I always washed them out, and I keep them in a big bag, and so I just took them out and gave them away, because then they could go and sell them and stand there all that time and process them, which I'm not able to do right now. They took things like just stacks of old paper that had gotten brittle, and it was blank, and they took a roll of paper that was old newspaper. I don't know where we got it. I think someone gave it to us from an old newspaper company, and it was in a great big fat roll, and it was thin paper. They use it sometimes to cover tables at potlucks. Anyway, they took that. They took a little bag of old hairpins and barrettes, and some of them were broken, and they took them. They took everything. They even took floats for the swimming pool. We have a stock tank. They took them, even though there was a note on them that says there's a hole in this and there's water inside. They took them. They took everything, and I heard some of them say, well, free is the right price. And of course, when they get them home and they decide they don't want them, it didn't cost them anything, and they can maybe free it forward. And so I was just amazed. I'd sit here and watch, and I'd say, somebody took that bag of, and it was just old cloth, or that wasn't cut straight, and it was just little pieces, and maybe not some that I wanted, and even some of it smelled bad, and they would take it, and they took old towels that had holes in them. Because, I didn't want to throw them out, but I thought there's just a chance that maybe someone might want to recycle it in a different way that I don't know or I'm not ready to do. They took old homeschool books that the covers were torn off. In fact, those were the first things to go. We thought, oh, nobody's going to want these. And they took, there was one year they weren't taking books at all. And this year they went for the books. And it's nice, to have a hard copy of things, because you never know when something's just the information on the web that you're so dependent on, you never know when it's going to be taken away. And they went for the books. I did not honestly have any hope that big stack of books would go anywhere, but somebody came and loaded up. In fact, every now and then someone would come and just take everything off the table and put it in their car or truck. They didn't even go through it. And when we had the books out, somebody came and just took them all. And that's fine with me. But it was interesting to look out the window, and sometimes they'd wave at us, but it's too time consuming to sit there and sell it all, and it's cheaper to put it out there than it is to load it in my trunk and take it to the Goodwill. And the Goodwill charges people for the product, so they get 100% profit. And this way, somebody who needs it can have it. So I hope you're busy doing things that you like to do while you listen. And today I wanted to encourage you that at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, to assign yourself something you've always wanted to make or do that you just haven't, because you felt like you had to have everything straightened up first, or you wanted to do so many other things. And yesterday I was talking to an old friend, and she said one of the things that she'd had on her list was to make one of these pot holders. Now, I have a stack of them here from Grandma's collection, so I wanted to show you what they are so that you can see what they're doing. Is they're wanting to make some of these, and they have bias binding on the side. You can make your own bias binding or bias tape. And these are, I imagine these are probably from the 1960s. And my mother-in-law had a lot of them that were brand new. So my daughter had made me some herself years ago. See, there's one she made. Isn't that pretty? With some of the fabric we got. This was way back. These were fabrics, I believe, that we got way back in the 1970s that I had kept. And she made me this. And so what this friend of mine said she had on her list is she wanted to make one of these. And that's what she did yesterday. So I wanted to show you some of the old ones and some of the new ones. These are some of the old ones. And this fabric looks like it's from the 1940s or 50s. And it was in my mother-in-law's collection and had not been used, although I think the fabric was probably old from old shirts. And because in those days they didn't buy special fabric to make pot holders, they used their older fabric. So anyway, my daughter had made me these in the 1980s and 90s. Aren't they pretty? And it looks like she created her own bias binding around it. And I wish I could still get that fabric. And so here's another one that she made me. And so I've got this collection here of the old and the new. And so she'd written that down, that she just wanted to make something. I want to take time to show you two more things. That she wanted to make something small. And so my daughter decided to have a custom in her life, which she's tried to do, to make small things, maybe one small thing a day. And basically, she deals in cards and cardstock and the cutting machines. But before that, she made me this cute little wrist. I don't know if you remember, those of you who went to the home ec classes in the 1950s and 60s, they had these wrist pin cushions, so to make it easy when you're using the sewing machine. And so my daughter made one, and it's so cute. And what she's done is she's just taken the petals off of some old artificial flowers and created a base, and then a round, just gathered round piece with it, got some stuffing in it, and created one for me. And it was just a small little gesture, and I've been finding these things The only thing is I don't use it so much because it's so pretty. But that's what they used to use when we were in the home sewing classes at school. And then another thing she made me, I think she probably found this somewhere, a pattern that she paid for on Etsy or something, is this little strawberry, and it's tied with another piece of fabric. And I've kept these little things around because they're so sweet and they're so calming. So do one thing that you would like to do. It doesn't have to be something you make. Maybe it's just something that you change, or something that you just some different thing that you want to do, or something that you go see outdoors. Now I'm trying to stay home more. I did go out once, and I'm like the gopher. I'm like the groundhog. I decided to come back and stay another year because it was so dreadful out there. And but at the same time, I think we need to be busy gathering things if we need them, just in case the powers that be decide they're going to lock us up again. What this is all indicating to me is that they haven't been able to drive us crazy enough, and they haven't been able to destroy our economy. So they have to keep trying. So apparently we're stronger than we think we are, because they have to they have to keep scrunching down on us. But you know what? This would be a good time to become the author you always wanted to be, or and put these characters in your novels. And this would be a good time to become the artist you always wanted to be. This would be a good time to go through your sewing materials and just seriously sit down and sew some things that you've just been, I don't know, waiting to have time for. If you would chuck the business world out there and quit going after what they have to offer, and just start to settle down in your own home and produce your own things. I have a little vegetable garden, and I have been out snacking this morning. I've been out grazing, and thinking, if a couple years ago, I'd just gotten in the car and gone to the grocery store and got it, but the taste and the flavor would not have been the same, and plus the pleasure of walking around out there. And I used to wonder, we had this piano teacher, and her name was Mrs. Passwaters. Can you imagine where in the world that name came from? And they were from Kansas, and they were friends of my mother-in-laws and father-in-laws, and they knew them. They all knew each other back in Kansas. Well, out west here, she was a piano teacher, and she lived to be in her 80s, I believe, but up until the last, she was out watering her garden and picking the peas and the green beans and the carrots and the lettuces and all the greens. And I wondered, why is she doing this? She has a pension. She earns money teaching piano. Why is she bothering? And the reason was because it tasted good. She was used to it, and she did not want to pay for the grocery store products. And I'm starting to understand that more now, too. For one thing, you're paying for a product where you're not quite sure what all went into it. I know what's in my garden, and I know what the soil is. I know what everything's made of. I don't use any chemicals on it. And then the taste is so almost spiritual. When you taste this food, you can feel the health and the energy almost immediately, and it doesn't take very much. Whereas the produce and things that you get that's commercial, it takes a lot of it to make you feel satisfied. So I just wanted to observe that for you. So another event that we have had here is in the middle of a drought, and Oregon always has a drought every July and August, so we're used to it, and everything turns brown, and it's just that season. In fact, I ought to have a drought fashion, and I ought to invent some kind of drought tea, or just celebrate, because there's so many more seasons than just spring, summer, fall, winter. And so right in the middle of the drought, when everything is just parched brown and and practically white glare of the hot sun. It's just like walking across the desert on this property. So I was walking to the meeting house to church one morning, and there is a pool of water blocking my path, and the water was about this wide. And after we got out of church, I went back and looked, and the water was still this wide, but was very deep. And then I noticed that it was spreading a little further, but it was still very, very deep. So I called one of the church members who's like the ever-ready bunny. He's always wanting to fix things, and he came over, and he was familiar with this. And so he got a shovel, and he dug into that hole, and he found a pipe. And there was a shut-off valve on this pipe that had been broken off by a root of some kind, a tree root. And it was very old because he said it wasn't made of the standard materials. And he said that it was coming from the well. And I always wondered, over the last year or so, the water from the washing machine is just trickles out and takes forever to fill it up. I've started using the mini wash, because it fills up a little bit more quickly, but nothing has any pressure around here. And I have asked about it. Nobody seemed to know what was going on until this pool appeared. Well, after he dug that all up and got a new pipe and a new shut-off valve there was another. I thought there was a spring. I thought, there must be a river under here or something. And so then there's another pool of water appears somewhere else. So he dug that up, and there's another pipe there and another shut-off valve. And it turns out that the man who built this place, or the one before him, had an elaborate sprinkling system on the acreage, and none of us ever knew about it. Even the church members didn't know about it because they passed away before we moved here, some of them that knew, and they wouldn't have probably paid much attention to this man building this place anyway. The house and church go together because he built this house and then donated all the property to the church. And so he had quite an elaborate system, and we are still this man is still going and replacing these shut-off valves and making breaking the system up because it got all buried and no one knew that there were these pipes, anything. And he had quite an elaborate sprinkling system. Well, for the last 28 years, or maybe more, I have been attaching mile-long hoses and carrying them around my shoulder and with a sprinkler on the end, and then changing them every hour and moving it around, trying to keep everything green. Our fire department encourages us to keep our land green around the house. And all these years, I did not know about this sprinkler system, and nobody else did, but it's all over the place. And so that's been one of the big events around here. And some of you that live in older homes are probably discovering there's things underground, and there's grids laid out for certain things, maybe old gardens. And so I thought that was quite a revelation. And now I don't need to drag these hoses around, but I found it such a bad habit that I can't get used to the fact that you can hook everything up just within a few feet of each other, because this is the way that it was arranged. So in spite of the fact that it might not be too interesting to you, it's filled up a little time for me to tell you that so that you could get something done. So do something you've always wanted to do and improve your life in some way. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I've learned, and maybe you have learned something. Maybe you could leave a comment. There are no comments on the channel here, but you can go over to the post where I've placed this and leave a comment. And one of the things that I have encouraged all of you to is try to learn something. Try to learn something new. It keeps your mind active, especially if you're elderly like me. It's very important to learn something. And one of the things that we were trying to do at one of the events we had in my home for the descendants was to make puzzles, and we made jigsaw puzzles, and wanted them to make crossword puzzles, and then there was another kind of we were going to do games too, make our own games, and which we all did. And I learned I was really concerned about needing new little carpets, little foot carpets at the front door and one in front of the couch. Not that we need them, but they're a little accent, and it's quite pleasant, to sit down and have a soft carpet at your feet. But I didn't want to spend. I'm tired of spending money on them. When they wear out, they end up. I don't know where they end up, but on this property, I use them again outside, and I make kind of a little patio under a tree or something like that with a chair, and I just use these old carpets up till they disintegrate and the grass starts growing through them. And they're just small, and I just got tired of it. And I thought, I don't want any more of those commercial carpets. So I learned how to make my own carpet, and I watched a video of a girl who did it. It was so clever, and all she did was attach this non-skid stuff that you put on underneath a carpet she used a spray adhesive, and she attached it to some fabric that she liked. It was a piece of fake fur, and you could use burlap, you could use anything. So I learned how to do that, and I'm looking forward to that. It will cost something, but not near as much as the amount of money I have invested in commercial carpet. And all I'm talking about are these pieces that are 8 by 10 that go in front of your couch, or the piece that goes under a coffee table. And so I learned to do that. I knew that was possible, and I noticed when I was growing up on the homestead in Alaska how many women either crocheted or braided their own rugs, and they used old shirts, old men's plaid shirts. And later after that, denim was really popular, and they used that in a lot of home crafts and home things like rugs and carpets and even blankets. So that is what I learned. I found two video type vlogs that I liked. Maybe you found something you liked, and one of them that popped up that I started to listen to was the Relaxed Guy. And what he does is take sound equipment and go into a forest or where there's a lake, or where he can capture sounds of birds or water, or anything that's soothing. And some of his videos claim it would help you sleep, and others said, they'll relax you. So I have been really, really enjoying that. Although I live already out in the country, there's a lot of tractor noise out here during planting and harvest. So I've really been enjoying his work. And the other was, I'm still once in a while tuning into Dr. Berg, who has little 4 or 3 minute video blurbs that I can listen to without losing, concentration on health, on natural health. Very good. And then I have found 2 young ladies. Now, you will find objection to something that they say or do, because I don't think they have the same convictions that I do or you do. But it's interesting and valuable to see what they're saying. And one of them was called Darling Desi, and the other was called The Cottage Fairy. And what they've done is, on their blogs, they have come home and they have discovered deliberate, slow living and beautiful living. And it's just things like how to make something, or a lot of the cottage core comes into it, where they're just going back to what we did back in the day, homemaking things, and getting a great deal of enjoyment, but also peace from it. And you can be quite rattled if everything you have and everything you do costs money, and you can come home and feel quite shaken by the amount of money that it's taking out of you, and never being able to really survive financially. But a lot of people have discovered this slow living, and I just enjoyed these 2 young ladies. They aren't like we are, maybe not quite as conservative, but I enjoyed those 2 girls because they have left the the commotion of the commercial world and come home and discovered living in nature and living with homemaking things. Now, if you're having a problem with distress, now they call it stress, but it comes from the word, I believe, distress. I have some thoughts about that today, and I remember, just speaking of these last two videos that I referred to, Mrs. Elton, remember in the I believe it's 1995 Miramax version of Emma, where Mrs. Elton said, the world is not necessary for me because I have so many resources in here. I just got such a kick out of listening to her say that, I have so many resources and I don't need the world. I have heard people say things like that, even in modern times, that the world means nothing to me. I'm not moved by anything that happens in the world or by any product that they might have, because it means nothing to me because my resources are all in here. And I've often told you on these videos that your capital is actually in your hands and in your mind and in your voice, and you can do something with your life and you can advance yourself through that. And you don't really need, I remember this man was, and another thing that I have, the reason I'm saying it is because this man I'm referring to, that we knew, he was quite elderly when we knew him. He was of a tribe of people, I believe, called the Melungians, and he said he was Portuguese, and he figured out ways to do things at home. He was a member of the church. He was one of the elders in the church in the days when we were really young, and he had many ways of doing things, and he had these, but his great-grandchildren were very modern, and he wanted to help them out in their life and, give them something to help them. And so one of his grandchildren said, "Grandfather, if you want to give me something, I need a," and they named all these fancy machines and computers and things and then they could get into business. And he said, "I'd like you to start out by writing in a notebook, a composition book, with your hands and a pen," because he knew that putting your thoughts on paper with your hand, it would produce in you something that was very important. And he said, and then after you've written something of value or importance, then we'll think about maybe publishing it or getting you, advancing you. But you can advance yourself and in many ways, and not wait for the world to advance you, because you can advance yourself. And those of you who are under some kind of stress from the world, where are you getting this stress from? Is it reports on the news? Probably. And I keep hearing from people. Of course, if you don't watch the news, which is very unhealthy for you, if you don't watch it, somebody's going to tell you about it anyway. And but if it's from the news, the media, I think you should be highly suspicious of it, because they are going to keep us constantly in a state of unrest and a state of agitation, a state of being upset. And when they find out that everyone's kind of calmed down and it's not producing the kind of spending, see, the unhappy, anxious people spend more money. And when they find out they've got ways of surveying everything, and they find out that it's not having the effect that they want, then they create more fear. And fear, of course, creates stress. And someone told me the other day that when you're under a lot of distress, your body's resistance to disease is very low, and you can get sick very easily. I know I've had times in my life where I have the stress of hearing of everyone's, maybe it's people or just the disappointment of the life that some people lead, and maybe friends, maybe relatives, and the stress can be so disappointing that your body almost shuts down, and you just want to go. You just want to go to bed, or you catch a cold very easily. So I think it's very important, because to learn about distress and how to handle it and how to get rid of it, because the first thing you have to take care of is your mind. And it's all interactive. I mean, yes, you have to take care of your body too. And your body and your mind work together very intricately. Isn't that interesting? And so if you can keep your mind healthy and strong and happy, and you know there is a command in the Bible. Well, there's a lot of commands in the Bible to be happy. God wants us to be happy. He knows how good that is for your blood. He knows how good that is for your health, for your bones. The Bible talks about how grief can make your bones brittle, and it's just a figure of speech, but in a way, yes, it's true. So distress can make you ill. And what we need to do, here's what we need to do. Instead of worrying about whether we're going to be able to have a place to live. I mean, ever since I have been maybe a teenager, I've been hearing that one day they're going to put us all in camps and we're going to live in these little places, these little cells, and we're not going to be allowed to eat real food, and it's just can put you in a state of stress hearing that. But this has been going on for a long time. Do you remember in the 1950s, some of you who are elderly had us all wanting to get under the table to escape some impending doom, a disaster. But you know what we have to do? You look at your Bibles and see what God wants you as an individual to do when he talks about, I am come to give them life and to give them more abundantly. He wants us to live. He wants, especially women, you can see the commands quite clearly for men and for women and for both, of what he wants us to do, to live for him, to continue to take care of the property that you've been given, or to be good stewards of what you have. If you have nothing, you have pent up potential. You have your hands, you have your voice, you have your abilities, and you can develop more of them. But think of all the things that stress prevents you from doing. It prevents you from obeying the Lord Jesus Christ when he said to be courteous to one to another, and to show hospitality, and for the women to guard and guide their homes. But if you get wound up in what the news media is telling you, that the world's going to be a terrible place, you might as well not have kids. They've been doing this for a long time. Back in the 50s, they were saying, this would be a terrible world to bring children into. So people were not having children so much. It slacked off. And they will tell you to discourage you, that you won't be here to take care of them. And they will tell you that there's no use buying a house because the market is just going to crash. Or they will tell you, they will never tell you that when it comes to buying a car, though, will they? And you have such a long time to pay for some of these cars. And they will never tell you when it comes to buying groceries at the grocery store. There's no use buying all these groceries. There's no use stocking up because the world's going to come to an end anyway. They'll never tell you that. And but the way they control you is through the stress and through distress and uncertainty. But you can create a certainty in your own home. And I always like to say, start out by getting dressed up and fixing yourself up as though you were going to a really fancy tea party, and put an apron on and have a list of things to do in your home that are important, and make your home, ignore the distress that the press is trying to put on us. Ignore that and clean up your house. Clean up how long has it been since you've cleaned up all the shelves and little drawers in your kitchen? That's needs to be done probably a lot more than we do it. And keep a track of everything that you have, and just to be more conscious of what you're doing in your home and make it better, and keep it updated and keep it repainted, and all these things that make living at home valuable and tolerable. And think about that, because what we ought to do is chuck the world and pay attention to what God told us to do in the home, and just take care of the home, take care of our husbands. I don't know how many times Mr. S used to tell me back in the 70s, early 70s, just I wish you wouldn't worry about all that stuff out there and just read this cookbook. And so, we have an opportunity to become an expert at a lot of things, even if it's cooking or sewing or, there's a piano behind me that I don't play because I'm too busy worrying about something else. But that's another thing, is when the Descendants came, they played that. And it was nice to hear it again. Now, one thing that stress prevents you from doing, think of all the potential that God's put in you. Potential means the possible ability to develop a talent or a skill or accomplish something, or just the potential of your mind. And think of how it makes you feel stuck. All the potential that stress prevents you from. Okay, what about you get all stuck and going around in mental circles over what's going on in the world? Are they going to shut us down again? Are they going to force us to take dangerous medications? Are they going to? Of course, I'm going to resist it every inch of the way. But I already know that, so I don't need to worry about it because I know that I'm going to stand up to them. But now they've got the fear that someone's going to come to the door and ask us about our medical history and whether we've taken certain recommended treatments and stuff. And I'm already planning on them coming. They're not going to be invited in, but I'll let them stand uncomfortably on the front stoop, the front porch, and make them stand a long time while I talk to them and get their attention. And then when they start to shift their legs to get more comfortable and then I'll realize that I can let them go. And I've got a big long speech for them. I've got Bible scriptures for them and questions for them if they do come and see. Actually, it's going to be quite amusing, and I'll have my camera too. But look at what stress prevents you from. It prevents you from humor. People who are under stress have no humor. And even there are some people that can take stress and have and still have the humor beside it. It prevents you from planning. And we're not supposed to be taking over God's plan for the future, but He wants us to make plans because He said without vision, without plans, the people fail. So you have to have some kind of plan for your day. And whatever you do today makes a better tomorrow. So your future, if you clean today and you do things today in your home, then tomorrow is going to be a brighter future for you. So you can create your own bright future. And I think of it only in a day's time, because I can only manage that. But, I have a notebook of what I'd like to have done by the end of the year, and I've got a master list. And so I think if you could just plan today and clean up for today and do something today that you would like to wake up to tomorrow. Wouldn't you like to have a clean bathroom when you get up in the morning? Wouldn't you like to have a nice clean refrigerator? Wouldn't you like to have everything just a little bit more progress made and not be putting stuff off and waiting in your work backing up? So whatever you do today is going to make a better tomorrow for you, so you can have a future, you see. And you have to be healthy. And in order for your food and your nutrients to do what they're supposed to do, you just cannot have that stress interfering. So if you've got stress and it's starting to affect your body and your joints and stuff, then find an exercise person or program that you like that's on YouTube or some other place. And even if you want to give a contribution, that's always helpful. And do something that you like, that you can live with. I won't recommend any in particular because I know there's always going to be something that somebody will object to. So everybody can just find their own because everybody's different. And do some exercises. I have suggested that if you're elderly, to do some exercises from your chair, and which are quite valuable. But I have advanced beyond that. I am now standing up and doing exercises and doing a little bit of running too. And but what does stress prevent you? All this pent-up potential that God's put in you, what does it prevent? It prevents you from planning. Number one, planning. And of course, that's exactly what Satan wants you to do, not to plan anything good, because then he can stop you from living for Christ in the way that you should and making any progress. So it prevents you from planning. It's also very unfair to your children. If you've got little children at home or even teenagers, very unfair for them to think that their mother is concerned about the world ending, or concerned about being a martyr, or concerned about all this, and not really making events for them, not making precious times for them to remember. Because, childhood is very fleeting, and even if they're teenagers, they're still children, and they need these memories and these events that where mother made home living a very pleasant, special place. And so it prevents you from planning. Number two, it prevents you from living. Stress prevents you from really living because you're not breathing. Isn't there a scripture that says, in him we move and live and have our being? You can't even breathe when you're under stress. So I would say it prevents you from living because it prevents you from breathing, and God wants us to breathe. And so find out how to breathe and enjoy it, and breathe in that fresh breath of life as though you were drinking fresh water and taking in nutrients. I've found a way to breathe that just feels so good. It fills up my stomach, and it's like taking in some kind of a vitamin mix. It's just wonderful. So it prevents you from planning. Stress prevents you from planning. It prevents you from living. It prevents you from doing. So you've got a stack of things that you never finished. Or maybe you brought home books and magazines that had ideas in there that you wanted to try, but you never did them. Because, the world's coming to an end. Why should I try? And so it prevents you from doing. And God does not want us, there's no indication in the Bible that wants us to live like that, or not live, or not breathe, or not do. And it prevents you also from experiencing. Now remember, one of my favorite McGuffey readers is number 4, the 4th McGuffey reader. It doesn't mean 4th grade. It can mean high school. They were just numbered according to the level that they were, but 4th does not necessarily mean 4th grade. And we're still using that 4th McGuffey reader because I enjoyed it so much, and it was the 3rd and the 4th were my favorite. And there was a story in there, the 4th one, called Susie's Composition. Have you read that? It was from the 4th McGuffey reader, the Christian edition. And she had been given an assignment to write a composition about something, and she did not know what to do, and she was in a kind of a tizzy about it. And her mother said, just go outside and sit down for a while. Sit down over there for a while and just go outside, and after a while I'll call you in, or come in afterwards. So she did, and while she was outside, she observed certain things, and felt certain things, and thought certain things. So when she got back in, she said, I still don't have anything to write about. But what her mother was doing was showing her how to have an experience so that she would have material to write about. So she said, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Were you warm? Were you cold? Was there a chilly breeze? What kind of nature activity did you notice? And what were you thinking? And she said, she told her mother all these things in this story called Susie's Composition. I've forgotten what page it's on, but so there, her mother said, there, write about that. You have had an experience. So we have to experience, and we can create our own experiences. And that's why I say, you ladies at home, you have just got a wealth of opportunity to to use your potential that you might not even know you have. I know once a week I try to have a ladies' Bible class here if they want to come. We've been skipping a lot of them recently, though, because I've had so much going on. And so I get to try out new recipes, and I get to become better at it each time. And instead of growing weary and well-doing and thinking, I've been doing this for 30 years, I want to change, then I'm starting to think, okay, I'm going to try something different. We're going to do it a little bit differently, and I'm becoming more proficient at it and becoming more expert at what I do, and learning how to make tea and how to serve it, and observing how people respond to it. And so stress can prevent you from experiencing and from doing. And so I've got it here in my list. So what stress can prevent you from? It can prevent you from planning. It can prevent you from living and from breathing. It can prevent you from doing. It can prevent you from experiencing. And it can prevent you from following God's will. And if you just take that old Bible and the New Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and you start reading it, the New Testament especially is lively. It's so full of thoughts and things for you today to do. Be kind and loving to everyone, and let us always outdo one another in love and good works. Well, that's going to keep you pretty busy, isn't it? Trying to outdo one another in love and good works. And so you've got a family around you. Maybe they're grown or gone, but somehow you can still embrace that philosophy of life, to outdo one another in love and good works. And if your family has moved away and you don't have anyone, then you learn new skills, because I had this wonderful homeschool family around me, and I just never ever entertained the idea that they would be away from home or too far away. Maybe they would be across the street, or they would be in a neighboring area. And I had to learn a skill that I never had to really do before, and that was how to how to write letters to them, and how to send packages, and how to communicate in a different way, and how to outdo them in love and good works in different ways. And I had to learn how to bake products that would mail. I had to learn it's more work, really, if everybody moves away. So try to make everyone stay around, because it is so much work when they move far away. But I had to learn to do things differently. And so there's so much potential in the home, and there's so much potential for you. And one way that you can... Now, I've told you what stress prevents us from doing, but let's talk about getting ahead of stress and getting ahead of the enemy. And that is, first of all, pray it away and breathe it away. Those of you who have had labor and birthed a child, if you had a midwife, they taught you how to breathe away the pressure and breathe away the pain. And this is the way you have to do with stress too. Just go back to your early birthing training. And those of you who have never had children, you can still use this. It's a way of, and you can look it up too. I don't want to spend too much time telling you how to do it, but it's a way of breathing in and puffing out in short breaths, and breathe away the stress, and lose your dependence on the world or on mankind to make life better for you. They might make life worse for you. And it's wonderful to have church members in support of you, and we're all supportive, but what if they're not? Then you have to remember that your sole dependence is on God, and you cannot be stressed out because the world's not behaving itself. It's just going to get worse and worse. They're going to try to find more ways to get rid of us because we're in their way. And but you can get ahead of them, get ahead of the enemy. The best way, of course, of getting ahead of the enemy is to pray for your enemies. Look up the word enemy in the Bible and see what all you can do to get ahead of them. When people are confident and they're strong, they don't have to be pushy. They don't have to push their will on everybody else. So you know that the enemy is in more distress than we are, because they constantly have to push their programs on us. They constantly have to intimidate us. They constantly have to put us under stress. And they know, whoever they are, the powers that be, they know that when you're under stress, you're more vulnerable to disease, and you're more vulnerable to breakdowns, and to accepting everything mentally and not being alert. So lose your dependence on the world or on mankind. And I know, like I say, it's lovely to have the church and the church members around you, but they could also break down and not be supportive of you. So start to build yourself up through the Word of God and through prayer. Excuse me. And have thoughtful time. This is why I suggested that, goodness, I hope I haven't lost my voice, but have thoughtful time. And this is why I suggested that you watch some of these young people that I mentioned. They don't have the same philosophy we do, but they are spending slow time and thoughtful time. Spend some thoughtful time doing things slowly. You know, I used to have stress cleaning, stress dinner, stress everything, because I was always behind. Well, lately I have decided I don't care how long it takes to prepare dinner. I want to enjoy the chopping. I want to enjoy the scent of it cooking, and I want to enjoy the whole process, putting it here and putting it there and mixing it here, and quit trying to rush through it in order to make sure everyone gets fed, but to also enjoy it. And it's very important not to pass on these rushing ideas and this distressful activity to our children. And for too long, we've been following the path of the world. And do you ever hear this expression? You know, I was, in the beginning when I did videos, I did figures of speech. Well, one figure of speech that you've probably heard a lot was to have the rug pulled out from under you. And since I mentioned rugs, I wanted to talk about that. Have you ever seen what it's like? I mean, maybe there's a cartoon or something you've seen on TV or on videos where someone's standing on something and it's pulled out from under them and they fall. Okay, if you are too dependent on the way the world is acting, you just want the world to settle down and for your government to behave itself and everything to be okay and to have life as normal, if you depend on that, and that's who you're wanting as your stability, then you can have the rug pulled out from under you, and that will make you fall. And so I'm sure there's probably more to it than that. And it might have something to do with flying carpets. I don't know, because I haven't really looked that one up. But I used to like to find out more about figures of speech in different cultures. And so for too long, if you followed the path of the world and then the rug was pulled out from under you, well, now you feel lacking in stability. So you've got to not depend on anything except develop a sense of stability that you can depend on, things that you do. And I've told you that one of them is getting up in the morning and having a little routine, taking care of yourself first thing, if you can. And I've had a lot of commotion around here because I had the relatives and the descendants here, and we had a program and stuff. But after a few days, I realized, hey, I am not going to be able to be encouraging to them if I don't get back on a routine. So I had to spend a little more time with myself in the bathroom, and also back in my room with my exercises and anything else that I needed to do. And also ask God to help you not to be upset. And the Bible says, fret not, it only comes to harm. You might want to look up the word fret for part of your homeschool assignment. Look up the word fret and see what it means. And The other thing I think that is a really good thing, have thoughtful time, lose your dependence on the world, take care of yourself. A lot of these young people are getting into self-care, which we kind of resisted, didn't we? Because we were told, Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. Well, I'm sure that God does not expect us not to prepare ourselves, not to bathe, and not to in any way appreciate our clothes or anything like that. I'm sure that that's not what that means, but your self-care does come first because your prayer is part of your self-care. So take care of that, and then lose your dependence on the world and pray for your enemies and ask God to help you not to be upset, and then learn to breathe away the stress. And so because for far too long we're following the media. Now, I don't trust the media because I've seen them lie so much, and I've seen them take me on I've allowed myself to be taken on a long, long ride with them way back when I was very young. Got caught up in an event that was broadcast on television, and it was apparently a live event. It was way back in the 80s, and I was really caught up in it. And then I discovered just recently, how it was done and how the cameras were all there and how it got everybody upset, and it achieved a desired end for these people, that we would vote a certain way to prevent this from happening again. So I don't have any dependence on them at all anymore. And so then find ways to relax. And in some ways, I think I'm more relaxed when my house is clean. So while I'm cleaning, at first it feels a little stressful. Start breathing a little bit differently and start putting things away and moving things around. And one thing I have to do, I don't know about you, everybody's different. One thing I have to do is block out the rooms that I'm not working in. Because if I start thinking about what a mess everything else is in, I can't accomplish in this room. So I start with this room and just don't worry about the rest of it. And eventually God knows my intentions, and I'm asking him to help me. Did you ever think of, in church they have these prayers, and it's for people that are in distress, or people that are sick, or they always pray for the government, and they always pray for, these big things. But have you ever thought to pray for your own housekeeping? Have you ever thought to ask God to help you be a guide and guard of your home, and to show you, to point you in certain ways, and reveal certain things to you, more awareness to you, how you can do it better? Have you ever thought about that being important to him? So also look for things that are relaxing, and ask God to help you. And the other thing I would suggest, that I have been promoting for a long time, is to develop a course for yourself. Make a course to follow. We talked about how this word core is in the word courage, and it means from the heart. And so a course also is that root word core, which means from the heart, means the heart. And so make a course for yourself to follow. And I enjoy doing that, and you probably have materials around that you could do that. Make a course to follow. I have that new book I bought called Cottage Core, which I am going through and trying to do all the projects in it. And they're just simply the old-fashioned projects we used to do. And also, make a plan for yourself. Here's the course. Do something in a book that you've always wanted to do, or make something. Sing, pray, read, play. I like to play. Food preparation, appearance, and just the things that you tend to neglect because you think your work is more important. And so give yourself a course. Take yourself to your own school and get up in the morning and have your prayer time, but put it in your little book and follow this course. Now, you have to be flexible, especially if there are people around. And if you've got children and you've got a husband and you've got people around, you have to just say, and they need something, or you need to do something for them. you just stop where you are on your list, and then you pick it back up when you're finished. And so this was about all that I had, except I want to mention one more thing about homemaking and homeschooling, is that while we were homeschooling, and this will work for you too now, time took its time. Time actually could stand still because we'd get to talking or looking at something or the meaning of something or how to do something, or we would clean up something, make the house a little better, redecorate. I remember we used to go to this outlet for fabric where you could get really cheap cotton, and it was in Texas. It was cotton fabric, and I remember buying things for $1 a yard and redoing my whole dining room with matching curtains and a tablecloth. It was just thin cotton, but it was pretty, and I'd make a little tea cozy to go with it and some accessories, and I would make tea towels and things all out of the same fabric. And time just stood still because while I was doing all that and the children were watching the transformation, we made cushions for chairs. It was just nothing, not like upholstery or anything like that. But they saw the possibilities, and they saw what I was doing, and that one day I knew that would gel in them, that they could do something without too much effort or money if they only knew that if you know how to use paper and you know how to use fabric, you can just about do anything you want. And so time stood still for us because we were redoing our place, and we turned our home into many different places that way. And so I don't know if this has been helpful to you. I don't have comments on the channel, but if you'd like to go over to the post, for which I will provide a link, I would appreciate it if you'd leave a comment. Just tell me, give me a little list of 4 things that you did while you were listening to this. Get ahead of the enemy and outwit them and beat them at their own game. Become successful in something that you do. Don't wait for the world to promote you. Don't wait to be advanced or promoted or sent up to the next level or to get a degree. Just give yourself a degree. Give yourself a good grade. Do well, and I'll see you next time. God bless. Bye.